UFC Fight Night Nashville Sandhagen versus Font just took place, and I'm going to go through the entire card, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main event, giving my reaction and breakdown for every single fight on the card, and my overall event recap as well. This was an incredibly boring card, a very bad card, and my predictions weren't any better. Let's start straight away with the early prelim opener of Asu Almabaev versus Ode Osbourne. Asu Almabaev dominated the fight, won round one, clear, got the takedown, controlled Ode Osbourne on the ground. Round two, similar situation, gets the takedown, gets the rear naked choke on Ode Osbourne, who had no answer to the grappling of Asu Almabaev. And Asu Almabaev has his easiest performance against his UFC level opponent, because he's been to many split decisions on the regional scene. But I guess some of these lower level flyweights aren't as good as we thought they were. Asu Almabaev gets a win. Good for him. I wasn't sold on the record. We just saw this with another guy fighting Tyson Nam, but he proved that he's a real deal and got a dominant win over Ode Osbourne, which is quite difficult to do. So yeah, we move on to another fight on the card, which was Sean Woodson versus Dennis Buzukja. I'm going to call him, because that's a great name. Sean Woodson won the fight, dominated the fight, really. Won round one. He did have some moments where he would end up on the ground and Buzukja would get a takedown, but he just didn't do anything with them. And while they were on the feet, Sean Woodson stuffed the takedowns well, landed leg kicks at range, which were very effective. And you could see as the fight went on that Buzukja's cardio was draining and he was losing energy, and I'm surprised he actually made it to the distance, because I thought Woodson was going to finish him in that second round when he had him up against the cage throwing body shots, because the body shots of Sean Woodson are actually pretty good. He's shaped like an alien, which is something that I took away from the fight, which is not something that maybe you want me to take away from the fight. I'm sure he wants to hear about his technique, but he's shaped like an alien. It's a weird shape of a human that he is. But he looked all right, and he won a dominant decision against a Serra-Longo guy who was taking it on short notice, so that was interesting. But Woodson won the first round very clear, so I guess you've got to give him some points there. Woodson dominated, stuffed the takedowns, landed body shots, landed knees to the clinch. Very nice work from him. We move on. Cody Durden versus Jake Hadley. I'm so sad about this. So Durden wins round one, gets a takedown early into side control, and it's pretty even on the feet, but Durden's actually landing some pretty good shots on the feet, and it seems like Hadley ain't pulling the trigger on the feet. Round two, Hadley's doing a bit better, but he's losing early on, but he gets a position on the ground where he survives on the ground early on, and then he gets back into a position where he gets a triangle from like the top position from the back. He goes for like an inverted triangle, and then he turns it into an armbar, and the armbar is legitimately in. I don't know how Cody Durden didn't tap. I have no idea how his arm didn't snap. Maybe because Hadley didn't have the leverage he needed, or maybe just Durden is that flexible with his bones. But Hadley basically had him done with that armbar. I don't know how every judge gave Durden the third round. He got outlanded that round on significant strikes, and he nearly got subbed twice. But every judge gave him that round. Round three, Durden won the round, dominated, because I'm so disappointed in Jake Hadley here. I felt like Durden was gassing. Hadley might have been as well from going for those sub attempts. He did have a nasty cut open up on him from an elbow early on, which wasn't helping him because the blood was in his eyes the entire fight. But in the third round, you're the one with a full training camp here. Durden's taken this. He has a fight coming up in 6 weeks, 5 weeks, whatever it is. He's taken this on less than ideal notice. Don't get out hustled in the third round. And Hadley, no joke, does nothing on the feet in round three. Shoots a double leg, doesn't get it, and lays in north-south position on bottom until about a minute left where he pulls guard. I'm not making that up. It was very sad to see. Unfortunate for Hadley. I thought he had a future, but maybe Makayev did fluke a win over Durden in hindsight. We move on. Up the card. Durden looked good, though. Looked good, and I rate him for the double booking stuff. He definitely won over some fans escaping that armbar. Very tough from him. We move on. Up the card. Billy Quarantillo versus Damon Jackson. I went with Billy Quarantillo winning this fight by late rounds TKO. He nearly got it done in that very same way. Damon Jackson won the first round, which I was shocked by, but he did look all right on the feet. Quarantillo looked very, very hesitant on the feet, coming off that KO loss. Damon Jackson was actually tagging him with shots and putting hands on him in round 1, which I never thought I'd say. And he then got a takedown at the end and got the back of Billy Quarantillo, but Quarantillo survived, and you could see as rounds 2 and 3 came along, Quarantillo was just hell-bent on breaking Damon Jackson, pressuring him backwards, landing the better shots. Working the body in the clinch was a massive deal in this fight. Both guys were landing knees to the body, but in between those knees to the body, Billy Quarantillo was digging these right hands, Usman versus Woodley style, into the body of Damon Jackson when they were in the clinch, and he would land like 4 or 5 solid right hands to the body. And whilst he can breathe throughout that, Damon Jackson's having his breathing interrupted, and that led to Billy Quarantillo taking over as the fight went on. Damon Jackson was always in there, but you could see in rounds 2 and 3 that he was breaking to the pressure, and Quarantillo gets the decision win. We move on. Carlston Harris versus Jeremiah Wells. Such a boring fight, by the way. The last few fights were pretty fun. Quarantillo Jackson, fun. Durden Hadley, really fun. Woodson fight was alright. You know what I mean? The first fight was a finish. It got really bad from here on out. Carlston Harris subbed Jeremiah Wells in the 3rd round by submission. Now, great. He gets the submission win. Everyone goes crazy. Good for him. This was but after a round of literally Wells laying on top of him. Trying a couple sub attempts here and there with a rear naked that wasn't quite in, and another choke that wasn't quite in as well. I feel like he was going for his own dash choke at some point. He ended up getting hit with an anaconda choke by Carlston Harris though. And round 1, Wells dominates. Gets the takedown, absolutely dominates Carlston Harris. Round 2, absolutely dominates with takedowns again. This time landing a bit more with the significant strikes and having another submission attempt. Just dominated the round. Round 3... shoots into an anaconda choke and just doesn't fight out of it. Just lays in it, waiting to get tapped, pretty much, which was crazy to see. I thought he was going to get a dash choke on Carlston Harris, but Carlston Harris survived and gritted through it. But Wells just didn't have it, dude. And Carlston Harris pulls off the sub, so impressive, but just not eventful in general, but impressive for Carlston Harris to prove me wrong. I feel like Wells was still the right pick, though, to dominate with his wrestling, but whatever. We move on. Up the card, Phillips versus Raoni Barcelos. I had this Phillips first 2 rounds. I don't know where they're finding some of the numbers from for Phillips in round 2. It was not 22-9 on significant strikes. It just wasn't that whatsoever. But he did win round 2, I think, based on a couple of significant strikes here and there. Won the first round. It wasn't looking too great for him, but then he got a knockdown in the first, which was very impressive. Got a nice knockdown on Raoni Barcelos. He also mixed in some takedowns, but then again, Barcelos was shooting a lot of them himself, shot 11 takedowns, got 3 of them, but Phillips was working his way back up all the time, very, very athletically, very impressively. Round 3, I thought that Raoni Barcelos clearly won the round. I don't know what judge, Kerry Rowland, who I think is a singer in America, gave Phillips round 3. I don't see how you can do that. I thought he got hit with all of the better shots and more of them, but the stats prove me wrong. But I'm willing to bet that those stats are wrong. I thought Barcelos won that 3rd round. We move on to another fight up the card, which was Ludovit Klein versus Ignacio Bahamondes. Did not expect this whatsoever. I had it 2-1 to Ludovit Klein based on the 1st and the 3rd round. He dominated Ignacio Bahamondes on the feet. In the 1st round, he cracked him with some big shots and looked like he wobbled him for a second, and then took him down, and it was just like Ignacio had no answer while Ludovit Klein was on top position. He did work his way back up in moments, but it just wasn't looking good because he didn't have enough time once he got back up to really put on some effort and work and get that round back for himself. Ludovit Klein made it his thing. Round 3, wet blanketed, did his thing on top position, landed some decent shots, I guess. And Ignacio Bahamondes just couldn't get back up when he needed to. And when he was on the feet, he was worried about being taken down. So I was very impressed by Ludovit Klein. Haven't seen that from him before. And he has his best performance against his toughest opponent so far. So really good win for Ludovit Klein. I picked Ignacio like everyone who had a brain. But Ludovit Klein gets it done. Coming up from featherweight, he gets it done. Crazy. We move on to another fight up the card, which was Tanner Boser versus Aleksa Camur. Actually a great scrap, only because Aleksa Camur's chin is made of granite. And only because of that. Tanner Boser was good, held him up against the cage quite a bit, but when they weren't against the cage, They were both landing really good shots. Boser was chopping at the leg in the early rounds, and then Camur started chopping his legs in the later rounds and taking out Boser's leg from underneath him with like an inside leg kick and stuff. It looked like Camur had some technical ability to land shots, and it even looked like he might have rocked Tanner Boser in round 3 at one moment. But he was just not moving his head, and Boser was landing a bunch of shots. But what can we expect from Camur? He's only been doing it for a decade. Why would he move his head? Tanner Boser wins. Good performance. Holding Camur up against the cage when they're in close. Landing elbows off the break from there as well. And then whenever they were separated, just picking apart Camur on the outside and landing more than he got hit. That's the aim of the game. And Tanner Boser wins. Another fight wrong that I predicted. We move on. Diego Lopes versus Gavin Tucker. Now the interesting ones. Diego Lopes won with an epic submission. He pulled to a triangle. The commentary were calling this a flying triangle. It's not. It was not locked up by the time he hit the floor. Not saying that's what constitutes one, but it wasn't even close to that. You know what I mean? Like, he pulled a triangle, didn't have it at first, and then after like a minute of working on it, or like 30 seconds of working on it, then he got the triangle. It was very, very impressive because he got the triangle and Gavin Tucker tried to like pull out of it and posture up. So he started going for the arm bar instead. And then with the elevation that Gavin Tucker created by standing up and trying to posture, Lopes hooked the leg and ended up in top position in like a mounted triangle position, cranking on that arm still and reversed right into it. And Gavin Tucker tapped on the far side that we couldn't actually see at first. Very impressive win by Diego Lopes. Amazing performance by Diego Lopes. I'm ready to see what's next for him. I'm thinking maybe a Jonathan Pierce. You can't give him a can. You got to give him someone good because Gavin Tucker was pretty good. You know what I mean? He's not like some random unranked guy. Like, he had a streak put together at one point before Dan Ige humbled him. So Diego Lopes is the real deal. Going to be looking forward to seeing him fight in the future for sure. He took no damage. Put him on that Mexico card in September with Shevchenko Grasso as the main event. Sign me up. We move on to the feature fight. Dustin Jacoby versus Kennedy Nzechukwu. Jacoby was chewing up his leg on the outside. Nzechukwu did land a couple of decent shots. But basically it was Jacoby landing 1-1-2 down the pipe, chopping at his leg from the outside, moving around real well. But Nzechukwu was very aggressive. And basically what happened was Nzechukwu landed a straight left on Jacoby, but then Jacoby dinked Nzechukwu with like a slight right hook, and down goes Nzechukwu. Like, he's too big for light heavyweight, I think, and his chin is the problem. And if he's not fighting a 5'10 light heavyweight that he can guillotine or knee in the face, then he doesn't seem to have any other way of winning. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's good. He can expose someone who doesn't know what they're doing, but he just doesn't seem to be able to be good at range, especially with his chin. I have no idea how he took everything Carlos Ulberg threw at him and somehow came back and beat him in that fight. I don't understand how that works. Maybe in a rematch, Ulberg would destroy him by being a bit more patient. Likely. But yeah, it's his chin. Same thing against Daton Young. He got hit on the guard and got KO'd by it. And then he got dinked on the chin by Jacoby with a right hook. Daisy of a right hand, right on the chin, whiplash and everything. But that shouldn't be just finishing you off to where you can no longer continue. Some say early stoppage. I get it, but he only reacted like that, like he was coming to after the ref stepped in. It's hard when you're just laying there covering up like Tybura was against Pavlovich, especially at light heavyweight when you've just been knocked down. But not a lot of the shots got past the guard from Jacoby's ground and pound, so I think that's where the main concern is. If those shots were landing clean, they would have rightfully called that a stoppage that was good, but yeah, it was just maybe a bit early. But I reckon it would have been the same result anyway. Nzechukwu hasn't got a chin. We move on. Up the card. Tatiana Suarez versus Jessica Andrade. I picked Tatiana Suarez to win by sub. She won. Not in the way I was thinking she was going to win. She did get her takedowns. But Andrade did get back up from one of them, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And, cough over my fart. And Suarez was landing good shots on the feet. That was what she was doing. Front kicks to the body kicks just in general, hard kicks to the body over and over again. Tried to bring a couple of them up high, but they didn't work out that way. She was saying like she dominated the striking. I get that, but her striking still looked very worrying. And I was worried the whole time they were on the feet that Andrade was going to catch her and KO her because she was kicking in slow motion out there. She looked terrible on the feet, but she did win on the feet, which is the craziest part. Probably because of the takedown threat, and eventually the takedown threat came, and Tatiana Suarez in the second round jumped that guillotine from north-south, and it was in. It was latched up. All she needed to do was connect the hands, and eventually she did connect those hands and get the submission win over Andrade. Not much else to say than that. Good for her. We move on to another fight. Cory Sandhagen versus Rob Font. I'm a fan of you, Cory Sandhagen. I'm a big fan. But you're on thin ice. It was 5 a.m. Now, I'm not looking for wars every time. But we could up the ground and pound a bit, could we not? First of all, absolute domination from Cory Sandhagen. The way I said he was going to win, I called it. I said, Rob Font's been training for Song Yadong. Cory's been training for Umar Nurmagomedov. Listen to the surname. He's going to wrestle heavy against Rob Font, who has not been preparing for it. And he hasn't had full training camp for a 5-rounder either. And hasn't had an ideal weight cut because it went to catch weight. Sandhagen was going to win that fight with his wrestling 9 out of 10 times. I called it, but I was hoping it'd be more impressive. Like, get a sub. Get a TKO. You're on top of someone for 19 minutes. 19 and a half minutes of a 25-minute fight. Let's land a few more elbows of ground and pound. You know what I'm saying? Let's go to the body a bit more at least. Let's go for a sub. You had one sub attempt with a dash choke, which, to be fair, I thought was in round 5, and I thought he was going to get the finish, but Font rolled out of it and survived, because he ain't no Jeremiah Wells. But that's crazy to me, man. That is just absolutely crazy to me that Sandhagen made it that dull. I genuinely think he lost a ton of fans tonight. Even though he won, and that is good for him, and he's going to get a title shot next, I don't know if he gets a title shot if Aljo's still the champ, or if O'Malley's the champ and Aljo's not getting it. If O'Malley's the champ, 100% he is, actually. They will do him versus Sandhagen. But maybe not now that Sandhagen's wrestling. Who knows? But if Aljo wins, which I think he will, he'll move up and they'll do Sandhagen versus Merab for the vacant title at bantamweight. So I get it from that perspective, Cory Sandhagen. You're trying to secure your title shot. And it was a dominating performance where you didn't get touched. But I was actually thinking he looked a bit worried about Rob Font's stand-up, I'll be real with you. A little bit there, right? There were moments where Rob Font was throwing punches and I was like, oh, that was close. Oh, that kind of landed behind the ear. You know what I mean? And Sandhagen still had his moments on the feet now and again with his lead hook, which he landed quite a bit in this fight. It was his main weapon. But I was expecting him to chew up the legs of Rob Font. 5% leg attacks from what he landed at range. So it's like, I don't know. Interesting to me as a performance. Cory Sandhagen just wet blankets Rob Font for 5 rounds. Uneventful, but kind of expected. I called it to happen. I said he would wrestle. Didn't want it to happen, though. Sandhagen at 5 a.m. UK time. I'm staying up for that. Good thing Jake Paul, Nate Diaz was fun. Or I'd be very upset tonight. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Toodle pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye.